On Thanksgiving, I drove 3 hours to my aunt's house with a homemade pie and a smile. When I walked in, she looked me up and down and said, "Oh. We didn't think you'd actually come." My seat had been given to a neighbor. I was told to just grab a plate and eat in the garage. My cousin said, loudly, "It's not like you have a family to sit with, right?" I ate alone. That night, I got a text from my aunt, "Thanks for not making it awkward." The next year, I stayed home. They called me ungrateful, until the family group chat leaked. Thanksgiving used to mean something to me. My mom loved it. She always said it was about showing up for people even when life wasn't easy. She meant that. She lived it. But 2 years ago, she wasn't there anymore. Neither was my dad. I lost them both in the same damn year, my dad to cancer, my mom just months later to a stroke. That was the hardest year of my life, and I don't say that lightly. After the funerals, people stopped checking in. Days passed, then months, and the silence felt like a second loss. So when Thanksgiving rolled around, I decided to at least try. I didn't want to be alone again. I reached out to Aunt Shelley, my mom's older sister, and asked if it was okay if I came. She replied, "Of course," with a smiley face. I even offered to bring dessert. I made my mom's bourbon pecan pie from scratch, crust and all. I used her exact recipe. It took hours, but I didn't mind. I left around 6 a.m. Thanksgiving morning. I live in Springfield, and she's in Lebanon, Missouri, about 3 hours away. I dressed nice, combed my hair, packed the pie carefully into a box, and drove. I kept thinking, they'll be happy I came. It's family. This will be good for me. When I pulled into the driveway, I saw cars packed bumper to bumper. A neighbor's car, some out-of-state plates, and a few I didn't recognize. I got a weird feeling then, but I shook it off. Told myself I was being too sensitive. When I knocked on the door, it was my cousin Maddie who opened it. She looked at me like I'd caught her doing something wrong. She didn't say hi. Just, "Oh, you actually came." I stood there for a second with the pie in my hands. "I told Aunt Shelley I was bringing dessert," I said, a little confused. Maddie just stepped aside and called back, "It's her." Not my name. Not, "Hey, look who's here." Just her. I walked in, trying to keep my face neutral. The dining room was already set. Big table, all the good dishes, folded napkins, name cards at every plate. Every single seat was taken. Aunt Shelley came around the corner wiping her hands on a towel. She gave me this weird smile like I'd shown up uninvited. Looked me up and down and said, "Oh, we didn't think you'd actually come." I just held up the pie. "I brought this. Mom's recipe." She took it from me like it was a store-bought cookie tray. "That's nice. We've already got plenty of desserts, but thanks. You can put your coat in the laundry room." I looked at the table again. "Where should I sit?" I asked. She hesitated. "Well, we kind of ran out of space. The neighbor from across the street is joining us, so, maybe just grab a plate and eat in the garage?" I actually laughed. Thought it was a joke. She wasn't joking. I stood there in the kitchen, still holding my coat. Nobody said anything. Nobody moved. I looked toward the dining room. Jason was already digging into the mashed potatoes, talking about fantasy football. My name wasn't on any card. I made a plate in silence. Turkey, stuffing, beans. It all felt cold. I didn't even recognize the guy in my old spot. I'd sat in that chair since I was 8. He was chatting with Maddie like he'd always been there. Then Jason called out from the table, "It's not like you have a family to sit with, right?" He laughed. Loud. So did Maddie. Nobody told him to stop. Nobody defended me. I walked into the garage. They had one folding chair by the water heater, and a little card table with a paper tablecloth. No heat, no music, no conversation. I sat there, chewing dry turkey, listening to the muffled sound of laughter from the house. I thought about driving home right then. But I didn't want to cry in the car again. Not yet. Later that night, when I finally did leave, I got a text from Aunt Shelley, "Thanks for not making it awkward." That's what she wrote. Like I'd done them a favor by eating alone in a freezing garage. I didn't answer. I deleted the text and cried all the way back to Springfield. I didn't talk to them for a year. Not one word. Next Thanksgiving, I stayed home. No calls, no RSVP, nothing. Aunt Shelley sent a group text asking who was coming. I didn't reply. She followed up a few days later, "You coming this year or still too sensitive?" I didn't take the bait. I made my own food. I watched movies. It was lonely, sure, but I didn't feel like trash. That was something. But 3 weeks later, I got a message from my cousin Rachel. She always kind of looked out for me. All it said was, "You need to see this." Then came the screenshots. The family group chat, one I'd been left out of, was full of messages dragging me. Aunt Shelley wrote, "She thinks she's punishing us by staying home." Honestly, it was more peaceful without her sulking around. She always brings a dark cloud since her parents died. Maddie, LMAO, she probably expected us to beg her to come back. Like we need her drama. Jason, Garage Girl strikes again, face with tears of joy. I was shaking reading it. But then Rachel spoke up. She wrote, "You made her eat in the garage. You gave her seat to a stranger. You humiliated her in front of everyone and now you're calling her the problem." Jacob chimed in, "Wait, she ate in the garage. I didn't know that." And that's when it clicked. A lot of them didn't know. The dining room had been full. Some thought I sat outside by choice. That I wanted space. They didn't know what Shelley and Maddie had done. They didn't know Jason had said that disgusting comment. The chat turned fast. Some people defended me. Some stayed quiet. But no one jumped in to back Shelley. Shelley stopped responding. Rachel sent me every screenshot. Dozens of them. And I said nothing. But this year, I've got something planned. Something they won't forget. I didn't respond to Rachel right away. I read every word in those screenshots, over and over again. And then I saved them. Not out of spite. Out of proof. Something inside me had shifted. For a long time, I'd let that family push me around, talk about me like I wasn't there, treat me like I didn't matter. I kept my mouth shut for years because I didn't want to make waves. But I realized something while sitting at that folding table in the garage: they don't care about keeping the peace. They care about control. They care about looking good to each other, to the neighbors, to whoever walks in the front door. The second I didn't fit that picture, they shoved me into the dark, literally. And when I didn't come back, that's when they got mad. Because I wasn't playing along anymore. So I started planning. Not for revenge exactly, not yet. I just wanted them to see what they did. I printed the screenshots. Every single one. I made copies, lots of them. I put them in envelopes. I mailed them to every single person who had been at that Thanksgiving dinner. Not just family. Neighbors. Friends. Even the church ladies Aunt Shelley always bragged about impressing. Inside the envelope was just a simple note, in case you missed the full story. And that's all I did. No signature. No return address. Just the truth, dropped like a stone in still water. It didn't take long for the ripples to hit. First came the texts. Jason messaged me, full of fake concern. "Jason. Hey, just saw something really weird floating around, did you send that stuff out? 'Cause it's not cool to air family stuff like that. I didn't respond. Then Aunt Shelley called me. I let it go to voicemail. Her message was full of tight-lipped anger. Shelley, you've really embarrassed yourself. I don't know what you're trying to prove, but it's just sad. You need to move on. Move on. She needed to move on from lying to people and pretending she was some perfect hostess. Then Maddie posted a cryptic Facebook status, some people will twist the past to make themselves feel important. Sad, really. But the best part? The church called her out. One of the older ladies at her church, someone I hadn't seen in years but who used to babysit me when I was a kid, messaged me. Ms. Carter, I read everything. I'm so sorry for how they treated you. Your mother would be heartbroken. You didn't deserve that. Ever. That hit me hard. And then, I got invited to the Christmas potluck at church. Not hosted by Shelley. Not her turf. And I went. I wore a nice dress. I brought my bourbon pecan pie. People came up and hugged me. Said they were sorry. Said they hadn't known. Turns out, when people finally see you as a human being and not just someone to gossip about, they start asking questions. Hard ones. Shelley's little social circle. It started cracking. Her reputation wasn't spotless anymore. The woman who used to lead the prayer circle. Replaced. Her neighbor who always brought the ham to Thanksgiving. Skipped last year and never came back. But I wasn't done yet. Because I found out something else. Rachel, after seeing how they all reacted, decided to forward me something else, something private. It was an email. From Aunt Shelley to another cousin, weeks before that first Thanksgiving I drove down. It said, she says she's coming. God help us. I don't want her ruining the mood. She'll sit there looking pitiful with that pie and no parents. Honestly, I might, accidentally, leave her off the table list. That crushed me. But it also lit a fire. They hadn't forgotten about me. They planned it. They planned to humiliate me. This wasn't some accident. It wasn't that they didn't have room. It wasn't that I showed up late. It wasn't miscommunication. They knew. They chose it. So I made a plan for this Thanksgiving. And this time, it wouldn't involve a garage. After I read that email from Shelley, the one where she said she might accidentally leave me off the table list, I just sat at my kitchen table staring at the screen. My hands were shaking, but not from sadness anymore. I felt rage. Cold, clean rage. That wasn't passive-aggressive. That wasn't a misstep. That was premeditated. She saw me grieving, still trying to hang on to what little family I had left, and she chose to cut me out. For what? To make the dinner feel lighter. Rachel kept apologizing. Said she had debated whether to show me the email. I told her she did the right thing. I told her, for the first time, I wasn't going to pretend anymore. And then something unexpected happened. Jacob messaged me privately. The cousin who used to sit beside me every Thanksgiving. He said he'd seen the messages. All of them. That he felt sick reading them. He hadn't realized how bad it was until it was laid out in screenshots and print. He told me that after that first garage Thanksgiving, he asked Maddie where I was, and she just said, she wanted to sit alone. She lied. He said if he'd known, he would have done something. I told him, you still can. So now there were 3 of us, me, Rachel, and Jacob. That's when I started working on what I called the reset. I decided to host Thanksgiving. Not out of some fake sense of making peace, but because I wanted to take back something they tried to ruin. Rachel offered to help. She's got a place just outside of Springfield, with a big dining room and a long wooden table. Enough room for all the right people. We made a list. A real list. Not one based on blood. Based on decency. We invited Jacob. We invited the church ladies who messaged me support. We invited 2 of my mom's old friends who used to help her make that bourbon pecan pie every year. We invited neighbors, a few coworkers, and people who had shown kindness when I needed it most. And we printed invitations. Not digital. Not texts. Real cardstock. We mailed them. One of those invitations went to Shelley. Not because I wanted her there. But because I wanted her to see it. Inside the envelope was a note that read, "This year, there's a seat for everyone who matters." A week passed. Then 2. Then I got a reply in the mail. Handwritten. From Shelley. It said, "You've made your point. But don't pretend this makes you better than anyone. Families have ups and downs. You're just being spiteful. No RSVP. No apology." But the message had been received. Then, plot twist, I got a call from Maddie. I nearly didn't pick up. But curiosity got the better of me. Her voice was tight, nervous. "Look, I know we didn't treat you right," she started. I didn't say anything. But it was never personal, okay? It was just, awkward. You showing up after everything, bringing that sad pie, acting like nothing happened, it made people uncomfortable. I finally cut her off. "You made me eat in the garage, Maddie." She went quiet. "I brought something my mom used to make, and you laughed at me. Jason made fun of me. You gave my seat to a stranger. You let it happen." She tried to backpedal. "I was just following Aunt Shelley's lead, then maybe that's the problem." I hung up. 2 days later, Jason texted me. Not to apologize. To warn me. "FYI, Shelley's not happy. She's saying you're trying to split the family. Says your Thanksgiving thing is some petty revenge move." That made me laugh. It wasn't revenge. Not yet. But it might become that. Because then Rachel told me something else. She found out Shelley had been snooping, calling around, trying to find out who was attending our dinner. Asking if people felt pressured to go. Spreading rumors that I was unstable, even that I'd faked parts of the screenshots. She was unraveling. And that's when I decided, if she wanted a reason to be mad, I'd give her one. Not out of pettiness. Out of truth. Because Thanksgiving wasn't the only time she tried to erase me. I found something in Mom's files. Something big. And if Shelley kept pushing, I'd let everyone see it. I didn't go looking for it. I was digging through a box of Mom's things a few weeks before Thanksgiving, mostly trying to find her old holiday recipes. But at the bottom of the box was a manila envelope labeled in her handwriting, "Shelley, 2009. Inside was a copy of a will. Not my mom's. My grandmother's. And it changed everything. My grandmother, my mom and Shelley's mother, had left behind a decent inheritance. Nothing huge, but a solid amount. Enough to help with a house, or medical bills, or college. The will clearly said it was to be divided equally between her children, Shelley and my mom. But right under that, there was a note from my mom, handwritten, dated 2 years after Grandma passed. It said, "Shelley handled everything. Said there wasn't anything left by the time it got to me." I didn't fight her on it. I didn't want to tear the family apart. My chest tightened. So Shelley took it all. All of it. Mom never said anything. She just let it go, even though we were struggling. Dad was out of work that year. I remember nights with no heat, Mom clipping coupons like it was a full-time job. And Shelley let her sister believe there was nothing left, while she remodeled her kitchen, bought a new SUV, and bragged about her smart investments. That's who she really was. That's what she hid behind her apple pies and church potlucks. And now, I had proof. So I made copies, again. I added the will to the pile. Scanned it. Attached it to the group email I sent to every single person invited to my Thanksgiving. I didn't add any dramatic message. Just a note, this is what Mom never told anyone. But I'm not keeping her secrets anymore. I hit send the day before Thanksgiving. The fallout came quick. Rachel called me crying. Not because she was upset with me, but because she couldn't believe what Shelley had done to her own sister. Jacob texted me, "If I ever see her again, I'm saying something." That's disgusting. Even Ms. Carter from church replied, saying, "I always knew something wasn't right. Your mother was too kind." And then Shelley showed up. Not to my Thanksgiving. To my house. Around 7 p.m., the night of Thanksgiving, while everyone else was still eating pie and playing cards at Rachel's, I drove home to feed my dog. I wasn't expecting anyone. But there she was, on my porch. Arms crossed, face tight with rage. "You went too far," she said. I opened the door and stared at her. "No. You did. You had no right digging through old family business. It's not old if it's still hurting people. You stole from my mother." She pointed a finger at me. "Don't act like you're some saint. You're just bitter. You wanted to humiliate me." I laughed. "I wanted to reclaim something. But you humiliated me first. You made me eat in a garage, Shelley. You turned me into a joke for my own blood." She started to talk, but I stopped her. "Don't pretend this is about dignity. This is about control. And now you don't have it." I shut the door. She banged on it twice, then left. That was the last time I saw her in person. But word got around. Fast. The church pulled her from her volunteer position. People she used to host for stopped replying to her invites. Rachel told me someone even reported her to the IRS. I don't know if anything came from that, but it made me laugh. The Thanksgiving I hosted. It was warm. Loud. Full of real laughter. People toasted my mom. They told stories. They passed around my pie and asked for the recipe. And for the first time in years, I felt seen. But here's the truth, because I won't lie to myself either. I didn't do all this just to share the truth. I wanted her to hurt. I wanted her to feel even a slice of what I felt in that garage. Alone. Unwanted. Cold. And maybe that makes me petty. Maybe I went too far. Maybe I should have just walked away. But I didn't. And I don't regret it. Because now, every Thanksgiving, Shelley gets to sit at her perfect table, knowing the one person she wanted gone is the reason half the seats are empty. She tried to erase me. Now she gets to live with the outline I left behind. And I'll be eating pie, with people who give a damn.